Hey y'all, and welcome back to Mystery, Murder, and Magic. So when I was researching today's episode, I was telling my mom all about today's subject, I guess you could say. And I repeated that phrase to her that I've said so many times on this show, and that's the phrase that things haven't gotten bad, they've always been bad. And we just didn't know about that, a lot of stuff, until the internet came along. So what we're talking about today took place in 1939 in Italy, and the subject that we're talking about today, her name is Leonarda Cianciulli. It's Monday, and that means it's time for a new episode of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. And here's your host, Andrea Lee, and sometimes Alex. I don't know, maybe we should just change that to rarely Alex. But anyway, so who was this Leonarda Cianciulli? By all accounts and appearances, Leonarda was this devoted mom who loved her kids dearly, and she wanted to protect them. She had actually gotten pregnant 17 times, but sadly she had lost 3 of those babies to miscarriage, and another 10 of her kids died when they were very young from childhood illnesses. So she had a total of 4 surviving children, and of those 4, her oldest son, Giuseppe, he was her favorite. I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but yeah. Anyway, I'm not even going to finish that. But anyway, Giuseppe was her favorite. Well, one day when he was a young adult, he came to his mom and told her that he had enlisted in the Italian army to help with the World War II efforts. Well, of course, like any mom, this worried Leonarda. I mean, it worried her a lot. And I'm sure she was very proud of him for wanting to do something so brave for his country. But at the same time, she feared for his life. Leonarda was what they call back then superstitious. But we're going to go back a little further in her life before we talk about being superstitious. She was born on April 18th, 1894 in a small town, or a small southern town in Italy named Montella. So yeah, today it would be her birthday. But I didn't plan this episode or save it. It just happened this way. So anyway, her young years weren't exactly happy. Twice before she was even married, when she was a young girl, she attempted suicide. Then in 1917, Leonarda married a man by the name of Raphael Pansarde. And Leonarda's mom, well, neither one of her parents, they did not approve. But it was because she was supposed to have married someone else. And because her mom didn't approve of the marriage, Leonarda swore up and down that her mom had cursed the marriage. Well, because she thought that, she and Raphael decided to move to Lauria Potenza. And I love Italian words, and I'm sure I'm slaughtering them, but it's just a beautiful language, right? Anyway, several years after moving there, Leonarda was in prison for fraud. Now, I looked high and low, could not find details on what that fraud was. Just that she was put in prison for fraud. Well, when she was released from prison, the couple decided to move again, and this time they moved to Lacedonia, Avellino. But they hadn't even been living there long when an earthquake struck in 1930 and destroyed their home. So they moved once again to Correggio, where Leonarda opened a small shop, and she was just well loved by her neighbors. Like, they just really loved her. Well, at some point before she ever married, Leonarda visited a fortune teller. And what that fortune teller told her Leonarda really took to heart. Now, what the fortune teller had told her was that she would indeed get married and have children, but every single one of those children would die while they're young. And she also told her that she could protect her children with a human sacrifice. Now, as I've already said, she had gotten pregnant 17 times, but only 4 surviving children, or she had 4 surviving children from those pregnancies. Now, I'm sure the words from the fortune teller were echoing through her head each time one of her children died. And when he came to her and said that he was enlisting, those words probably echoed again, especially the words of what she needed to do to protect them. Well, y'all, she didn't make just one sacrifice, but for good measure, she gave a total of 3 human sacrifices. Her first victim was this spinster lady in the neighborhood that Leonarda knew. Her name was Faustina Setti. She lured Faustina to her home under the pretense that she was trying to find her a husband. Well, Faustina took that bait and she came over to visit Leonarda. Well, once she was there, Leonarda had her write letters to her family, and in those letters, she told them that she was meeting this so-called future husband somewhere overseas. Well, after she wrote those letters, Leonarda drugged Faustina with some poisoned wine, and she murdered her with an axe. I wouldn't say it was poisoned wine. I'm going to go back on that. But it was spiked, I guess you could say. So yeah, she murdered her with an axe, and then she dragged her body to a closet. Well, once she had her in that closet, she cut her into 9 pieces. She drained the blood from Faustina's body into this large container. Now, not only did she kill her, she withdrew the money from Faustina's life savings. And what did she do with the body? Well, I'm glad you asked. She dissolved the remains with caustic soda and poured them into a nearby septic tank. Now, the next victim or sacrifice would be found on September the 5th of 1940. Her name was Francesca Soavi, and Leonarda had lured her with the promise of a teaching job abroad. Like Faustina, she had Francesca write letters to her loved ones and then drugged her with the spiked wine, killed her with an axe, and then baked her remains into tea cakes and stole her money. Y'all, I don't even know what to say. Just when I think I've read everything or learned all about serial killers, then there's something else added. Well, Virginia Cianciulli, I think I said that right. Cianciulli? Okay. Would be her third victim. Well, Virginia was a somewhat famous soprano opera singer, and Leonarda lured her by promising her that she had gotten her a job working with this theater organizer in Florence. And that's Florence, Italy, not Florence, South Carolina. So on September the 30th, 1940, Virginia pays Leonarda a visit. And once she got there, Leonarda did the same to her that she had did to the 2 others. And with some of her remains, she made tea cakes and fed them to her neighbors. And with the rest of her body, she made soap that she also gave to the neighbors. Now, by now, Leonarda was probably thinking that she had gotten away with the perfect murders. But, we all know there's no perfect murder or crime. So, the first 2 victims, they didn't really have this overly concerned relatives. They got the letters. They was like, oh, okay, But now, Virginia, she had this very concerned sister-in-law, and these 2 women were very close to each other. And none of the letters that Virginia had sent to her had made sense and didn't sound like something Virginia would do. As a matter of fact, on the night that she had supposedly left to go to this job in Florence, the sister-in-law saw her going into Leonarda's home. So none of this added up to the sister-in-law, so she contacted the local police, and they started immediately checking into Leonarda as a person of interest. Well, in the beginning, Leonarda defended herself from allegations that she was involved in these women's disappearances. And she just appeared to be this sweet older lady. So then they thought, well, maybe it was actually Giuseppe, and they should be looking into him. Well, when Leonarda found that out, that was her favorite son. So, she came clean. She wasn't going to let her sweet baby boy go down, for something at all. Even if he had did it, she probably would have lied for him. But she admitted to everything. And what she had to say about the murders was pretty bone-chilling. Now, about Faustina, she said, and this is a quote, "I threw the pieces into a pot, added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had bought to make soap. And then I stirred the whole mixture until the pieces dissolved in a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, I waited until it coagulated, dried it in the oven, ground it and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine, kneading all the ingredients together. And I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, though Giuseppe and I also ate them." I mean, what the actual yuck. Can you imagine finding out later that you've eaten a tea cake that was made with human remains? No, I would probably be sick forever. But then she goes on to say this about Virginia. "She ended up in a pot like the other two. Her flesh was fat and white. When I had it melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. I gave bars to neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes, too, were better. That woman was really sweet." So I guess us thick girls make for good soap and tea cakes. But in all seriousness, what the heck? Y'all, I can't even imagine someone actually being this heartless. And then when she talks about it, it's like Paula Deen describing some gravy she just made, Well, when she went to trial, Leonarda, it only lasted like 3 days or a couple of days. She was found guilty and given a 33-year sentence, and 3 of those years were to be spent in a criminal asylum. On October the 15th, 1970, while she was still in the asylum, Leonarda passed away from a stroke, and she was 79 years old at her death. Her remains were given to her family for, a burial, but the weapons and pot that she used to commit her crimes were given to the Criminology Museum of Rome, and they're still on display to this day. Now, there's a thing I should tell you about Leonarda's incarceration. She didn't waste that time, okay? She published an autobiography called An Embittered Soul's Confessions. Now, I haven't read it. I didn't even know it existed until the research for this. But you know what? I'm going to try and find it on Amazon or somewhere just to read through it. But, like, y'all, I got to tell y'all, this is not your everyday autobiography. I mean, I'm sure she tells about her life in it. But she also basically gives recipes for turning human remains into soap. Now, the story was already weird enough, but that little fact of writing an autobiography and including recipes just pushes the stories over the edge of gory, and there's no returning from that. I don't know. People be crazy. But anyway, that's all I've got for today's episode. Be sure to check out our social media links in the podcast episode description today. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. So anyway, we'd appreciate that. And y'all have a good day. I'll be back on Wednesday morning with the midweek mini. Have a good one, y'all.